Gonna do your sharing?
It's broadcasting. Yeah, I'm going to do my sharing. Hello, hello, hello. Let me just look at the audio mixer. Yep, it's working. Okay.
Oh, I got the notification there.
It's nice that it can happen kind of streamliney. Now, don't get distracted. It looks like a good picture. Something we did, I guess, fixed it.
Good job.
Hello, Dawn Possession. Sharing this with Facebook friends. Oh, I gotta shut off the volume. Something we did, I guess, fixed it. And share. And that's good for that. And share it with Twitter X. Why don't I got a icon here on that? Hmm. Oh, okay, that time it worked. Glitch. Oh, okay, it's here already. Alright, just took a little bit for Twitter to catch up, I guess. Okay, so you've been listening to some tapes up to 111. That's it's a mighty undertaking. Undertaking. Sounds good. Started streaming 3 minutes ago, talking about Tiendo and their students. Okay, so I guess I can get on with it. Okay, I got that. Alright, I guess I'm ready. Well, I gotta pop out the chat. Sorry. Pop out. Okay, so I know I named this something beginning in unison with our older member's mind, and the way that, of course, tape 254 is what talks about that, which Kathy and I just listened to again. And there's so much in it, it's I don't even like really talking about it. I mean, because it's awkward. It's hard for me to talk about it because I know Doe said it so well, and that's the place to go for the source. But I'm going with the flow, since, of course, there's lots of things to talk surround, the context of the tapes, and so it seems to be the way it is. And I think if T and Doe are um, um, behind my, enough behind my what I'm doing, then I think I probably wouldn't be doing it, because it's the way that things go. Is the lower forces come in and try to take you away from all the aspects of the real belief, and anyway, but so that you don't even see it anymore. You don't even think about it anymore. You don't want to ask for help, even though we ask for help in all kinds of ways. But so I'm always faced with that, of course, and it's part of the karma that with this vehicle. But it's not the same for everybody, I don't think, or except in degrees or departments, I guess. I've talked about that before. That there's different things that we each have that are a challenge to us, and a repeated challenge. We have a number of them probably, and they all boil down to uh, not having our older member's mind in us, not desiring to have it in us. That's a key word there, because you don't know when you have it. Well, sometimes but you also know that you can think because you can trick yourself. You can be tricked by the lower forces also to think that, and that's why we can't, even though in this tape 254, Doe talks about all these things I think I'm trying to express. I'm doing so in a clumsy way. Show that it's the desire to be of one mind with your older member's mind, thinking about what they're thinking about at that time, what their concerns are at that time, and uh, and then chewing on it, and still have that. It's like calling your older member on the phone and saying, asking their older member what they're thinking about, and wanting to help with anything that they might have me help with. That's the ultimate student, I believe, that wants to be like Jesus talked about. That, and I don't remember the exact quote, so I'm not going to bring it up right now. But as a master, that the master isn't better than their student. It seems obvious, okay, but the students recognize the master, and that's why we're here talking about T and O, because we recognize the master. Regardless of how much that recognition goes and where it goes and when it goes and how it goes, because it's all in degrees, I believe. And that's why we can't judge each other. But so in this tape, where it takes off with the part that I'm going to refer to tonight, is where with Dan Sodi saying that different computers and vehicles' genetic computer, is what he was talking about, I believe, create static. I'm synopsizing with these notes spontaneously. And part of Doe's response to that was, in other words, I could go through the thinking behind that. I know that doesn't say anything to some people, but the vehicle's genetic computer is the mind of the vehicle, and it's not reliant for its existence on the vehicle, the brain, except to where it can change and also communicate through to other people and to our own selves and our own minds, the thoughts we have that were genetically stimulated. So I guess that's part of what Dan Sodi is referring to. And he's referring to his own computer that does all this, I don't know, Kathy, would you say analysis? Which, well, so anyway, in Doe's response, if I can get it right.
Distortion, static.
Yeah, static. He used the word static at one point. That, I guess, it describes a state of confusion to me. And I feel like right now we're in the midst of almost total confusion. With the way things are happening in the United States and in the world. Not one, but in that amidst that confusion, just to say a little bit more about that, in my opinion, is the opportunity to seek our older members' mind on how to respond to it, how they think about it, and I don't do that nearly as much as but I do have that desire within me to find out things, and sometimes I do feel like potentially, I'm not saying that me specially, but anybody in the human kingdom can potentially be like a video camera, audio device for the next level, so that they can go through our consciousness to understand exactly what's happening and what we're seeing in the world. And so that could be a job on the laboratory. If that person wants to be in that service, they want to be used that way. Now, I don't know that I don't know what the conditions are for their choice in the use of any particular vehicle that wants to be used in that way. We can't judge that. We don't know. I'm not saying that I am being used that way. I'm just saying, but it occurs to me only because T and Do talked about that they were used in that way. They felt like that. That's the way I believe they said it, that they felt like the next level was, as they were going through their awakening, they were expressing these feelings to one another. And how this wouldn't be the most interesting story in the entire world forevermore um, is it's not beyond me because I know that it wasn't designed to be that way for everybody all at the same time. Except, I believe, in degrees, according to the grades in school of the people. So it's, you're only going to come to know something if you're ready to go after it. And so the next level's information is so special that they require you to work for it by finding it, identifying it, not being afraid to approach it because you know what you're going to look like to other people or the world, the intellectual world and the religious world and the spiritual world and pretty much every world is going to see you as they're going to think that there's going to be compatibility, yes, and that's the interfaces that we have. But but as soon as the influences get a hold of somebody, if they don't have more of a foundation, then they'll hear the information and it'll be like Jesus talked about, and it will, won't. It would be like a seed planted where there's no fertilizer, or there's no good soil to give it nutrition in order to become healthy as it sprouts, or it gets plucked up by the birds. I say that's the space aliens. I know I'm repeating myself. If there's anybody new here, maybe it might be interesting. But so let me get back to so Doe said to Dan Sodi, don't listen to thoughts of discouragement. You don't override the computer with intensity. In other words, you don't stop the thoughts or change the thoughts with intensity. It's you think about it, and in a way to bypass the personality of the computer. So the way I took that to mean, and these aren't exact words, so I'd rather you hear them on the tapes. But if you do hear it on the tapes and you think that I'm expressing it in a way that doesn't match what you're hearing, let me know. Let's have a talk about it. But so different computers and vehicle. Well, don't listen to the thoughts of discouragement, and you don't override the computer with intensity. To me, that was a very interesting way of thinking about it.
What does computer mean? What do you mean when you say that?
You're not overriding the genetic computer, and which is also the conscious mind computer.
What do you mean by computer?
Computer meaning
You mean a laptop?
the mind. It's actually no, it's not a laptop. It's the plasma-like substance that is a mind. The old terminology would have been a spirit. It's the thoughts that have frequency. So it's like a frequency object. It has a composition. It has a structure of everything that happened to the last vehicle that it was in, and so that's growing within each human vehicle. Or it's not necessarily growing. Well, I guess it grows in different ways. It either grows to simplify it. It's either grows into misinformation or it grows into true information, because it's of the mind. Spirit and mind were synonymous terms to Tiendo. And it's so the mind can figure out things. It's like the artificial intelligence, right? What you see on the screen is the interface. That's the brain. That's what's bringing you the information, translating it into words. But the mind is actually not in words, except we get it from words, because that's the way because otherwise we don't know what's coming to us in our minds, uh, whether we're interpreting it right, whether we're coloring it with our our history, and so when you have things in words, and actually you can hear the instructions coming like in the audio tapes, and the procedures and the ways of thinking, the behaviors, when you can hear all that through the audio tapes and videotapes and the written word, then you can change that programming of that computer, because that's what that information is. It's programming. It's and it's with all its limitations. Like you could be somebody that you get a disease, okay, and you think, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor, and I'm going to do what the doctor. I know in my heart I trust the doctor. I hope they can find a cure for me and have some medicine for me, and they're going to give it to me, and I'm going to take it home and I'm going to use it, and if it works well, it works well, and we're not going to be concerned about the side effects too much unless they're really bad, and that's it. And then if somebody else comes up to you and says, well, have you thought about trying a homeopathic remedy? And they might say, oh, that's quackery, because they don't know the power of the mind, and they don't know the power, and even of the placebo effect, which I don't think homeopathic medicine is strictly a placebo effect, unless it might be to some degree because of belief, but we don't know how belief actually affects the outcome.
Vaccines are homeopathic.
Right, because vaccines are based on a homeopathic, uh, giving you a little bit of a disease to stimulate the immune system to build the antibodies to fight it. Okay, so, but the RNA vaccine, my understanding, doesn't do that.
It changes the DNA.
It changes the DNA, and that's why they're having a lot of problems with it, and they don't want to talk about those problems. What's that?
Doesn't stay put.
It doesn't stay put. Like they thought it would be just regional to where they give you the injection, that you would have any side effects, but that was like to get you to give you an answer that didn't make any sense, because you're putting it into the muscle, then the capillaries are sucking that into the blood system.
But it was just supposed to target a certain thing. It wasn't supposed to go into other genes. So not that it wasn't staying put at the injection site, but that it wasn't staying put in the genes it was supposed to go to. It goes to other genes.
Right.
It doesn't just target like COVID.
Right, and so
or whatever. I mean, I just read something about it. Is the only reason why I'm chiming
Oh,
in.
okay. No, that's good. It's interesting. I'm glad for that.
Yeah, that it's supposed to go like and change a specific, gene, and it does do that. But then I guess it's also going into other genes and changing them as well.
Right.
Which
they're actually they're still interested in that same technology, and they want to continue to program because they can learn from it. See, and so
from a space alien perspective, you can definitely see why that would be something they would want done.
Yes, and also for the sense of they're tampering with things that are meant. They're meant to be able to be tampered with. Okay, but it's all in a matter of the problem is whether each person that's doing the tampering is actually asking the highest source that they could ask for what to do and how to do it, and how to test it, without subjecting people to all kinds of major problems with their neurology of their brains and with their heart.
Yeah, that's been the main thing.
Well, I found out the other day from a broadcast that I watched from these three individuals that made this movie that was based off the pandemic movies, that was banned on YouTube. I probably shouldn't even say that
Yeah, I was
word,
gonna say you better be careful.
but so I'm not going to say anything more about it. But
Mm.
in terms of using that word or any other keywords, but they had one person there that was in the trial of the you know what with the big V, and so and they were she was ignored, and another person had 35 uh, reactionary, what do you call them, bad reactions, different ones in her brain, and her legs wouldn't move, and and they didn't attend to her, and they told people to not talk about it that were on the staff. There's been some whistleblowers, and because they wanted to sell this product.
Yes, well, it's all coming out.
Yeah,
So
it's all coming out. The truth is, like Daniel said, after knowledge would be increased in Daniel 12, and so that brought on the advent of what we see as the 20th century, which is the last century for the end of the age, the 2,000-year age. Anyway, so
comments.
comments. Oh yes, okay. Yeah,
I
good
don't know if
idea.
there are any, but
Good stopping point. Yes, there's over 900 to listen to, and audio tapes, uh, and we hope to get the rest of them.
there's plenty to listen to in the meantime.
But there's plenty to listen to, right? Then Mr. Sawkiller, hello, says hi, and it's been a while since I've been on one of your streams due to my university studies. It's good to be back on your channel. Yeah, I remember seeing you quite a bit. So I guess you're of the same mind as Kathy right now, because she's going into a university study. What are you majoring in? I'm just curious, if you don't mind saying. Holographic Exit TV. Find out about you all over the weekend. Oh, okay. With what I know and having an open mind to info, I can say you all help heightened my thoughts. Respect. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Reminds me of the Holographic Universe book. It was one of the first books I read after I left the classroom. I have a particular affinity for the word holographic because Doe talked about it when we saw the Star Trek show, which we were watching Next Generation regularly. One of the episodes, or several of the episodes, had the hologram, right?
Holodeck.
The holodeck. I'm sorry. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And on the holodeck, one of the things Doe said about it later was that you could have a biological holodeck. I think that's the way he said it. I hope I got that right. But in other words, to where that's what we have here on Earth. It's a training ground. That was the other thing about the holodeck that was interesting to know, because of how this is a training ground for members of the evolutionary kingdom level above human. And to work in their laboratories, to be on board spacecrafts that are as big as planets. that humans don't know how to see what's happening on the surface or inside necessarily, depending on what the next level has configured, how they've configured their vibrations. I know that sounds kind of like pretty science fiction-y, right? Well, it is, but the truth is actually stranger than science fiction. I believe in that. I had a blog actually, that I probably still have on WordPress, with that name on it about 15 years ago. Maybe it was less than that, but I'm losing track. But but I never really stuck with that blog because it was just too hard to manage too many different things. But yes, the idea that this isn't real, that comes from the Black Hawk tapes, which I believe is tape 20, is it 25, 6, and 7? It's 3 tapes, I believe. Uh, and they're really, really enlightening tapes on a number of levels. I mean, they all are. They really are. I mean, but some, to stand out. Well, actually, it's not me that's saying that. It's actually T and Do that said that, because it was a tape to where they came to us to give a meeting because they got new information. That didn't happen all the time. Didn't happen that often. Sometimes they would get new information during a meeting, but sometimes they would get new information that they were usually chewing on quite a bit before they brought it to us, because they had a connection to where they constantly wanted to know what was on their older member's mind. And that's the subject of this tape, which is the same thing that, became distorted and is hard to swallow, but was represented by Jesus when he was saying that him and his Father's mind are the same. When you see me, you're seeing the Father. I'm not saying me is me. I'm saying Jesus was saying that, because he knew that he was in tune with his Father's mind. He knew how to identify it. He knew how it felt, because it's more than it's a recognition. And when our Father's mind is in a human vehicle, then it's the closeness actually in the human kingdom that can affect everybody in the human kingdom. And people can draw on. And so whatever mind they choose to bring with them, and mind is experience, it's what they've done, it's the talents that they have, the skills that they have, the abilities that they have, the way that they do things is all part of it. That's the next level way of doing things, which is not confrontational. It's working together in unison, because everybody has the same desire to do Jesus said it, you do the will of the Father. Thy will be done on earth is what the prayer is. You want their will for you. And they don't take your will. They don't let you give it to them easy. And but the lower forces, they love to take your will, and they give it to you easily. You don't even have to ask for it. They bombard you with it. They want you to be anything but a servant of T and Do and the one true God, the highest source that we can imagine, that we call him the Chief of Chiefs, or call them the Chief of Chiefs, to use the the crazy pronoun. I don't think it's necessarily a crazy pronoun. I mean, maybe I'm just old school about it, right? I think it represents two people. And so I guess you could say them, we could all say them because we all have spirits that associate with us, is the way I believe. And I think I see that. I can I can see sometimes when a different spirit comes in to have more influence over me. So I guess we're all, if we believe that, we're them. Um, let's see if there's anything else on the hologram thing. Um, yeah, in the Black Hawk tapes, where T would say, she didn't say anything about holograms, but she said that Lucifer and the space alien, she would just say Lucifer and his angels or something like that in the terminology. I don't remember what she said in the Black Hawk tapes, but they were talking about Lucifer. And um, I don't want to go through all the history of what they thought about Lucifer right now, but except that he was a member of the next level. I guess I have to give a little bit of history since there's new folks here. And that he was once allowed to become an elementary level member of the next level. But even as an elementary level member of the next level, along with the associates that also chose to side with him, which are all termed the fallen angels, being souls, uh, um, they gradually left the next level by wanting to go with their own mind, make their own choices. Even though the next level is all about making your own choices. But if you're not making choices that your older member would approve of, then you have no business remaining in the next level. You can just, you know, so, but that's a process, of course. But when you go against your older member and start to teach people that they are not your older member, they are not the highest God, they're not uh, they're just another, in one way or another, they're just another space alien group that has an agenda, and and maybe they have better technology, and that's sort of some of the mindset I believe that many of those fallen angel souls have as they use their hybridized human equivalent vehicles, and have they taught those human vehicles because their original vehicle died because it was a perishable vehicle. It was uh, like a next level vehicle is that's an adult is not a perishable vehicle. It can be killed, but the next level can grow another one if for some reason it was killed when it wasn't supposed to be. And that's why they use vehicles uh, um, like they came by the souls from the next level returned, the Father and Jesus, in my opinion, those souls, those older member souls, and all the ones that had any significant relationship with older members in the past during this civilization or a previous civilization, but primarily I think in terms of this civilization. Uh, um, um, they brought them back to have a training ground I know I got off the track, but I just want to skip to the bottom line on this, because otherwise this becomes an entire conversation in itself. Which the best place you can go to really get the full picture is to read the Heaven's Gate book, which is available at heavensgate.com. Um, and which isn't a site that I have anything to do with, except that it it is still in the condition of what I believe Tiendo left behind for us, and students, and the student crew left behind. The elder students would be to us, even older members, potentially, if the next level makes that assignment next time, to whatever they do. But just to be, I get off the track all the time, because going down what people would call wormholes or rabbit holes. It's not a wormhole; it's a rabbit hole. But a good worm, it's a happy worm. I got my silly side too, but those souls from that were part of the next level basically cut themselves off, and then the next level cut them off. And that was a gradual process. It happened, and they were given opportunities to a number of opportunities, but they chose to not seize those opportunities, and so now they're slated for recycling. That's a little bit of a nutshell. And what's going to be saved potentially for future opportunities are any of those that are separating from the world in their own way. And according to Tiendo's discretion, in my opinion, and those souls that recognize their older member as though that have weaknesses, and those souls that left with our older member when they did. And so those that have weaknesses have the opportunity to continue to work on whatever those weaknesses are. And one of the biggest tasks that was left behind for us, because the tasks are endless, is to share Tiendo's information with others, get their information out, disseminate their information, give people an opportunity to see the depth of their teachings, which is apparent in the audio tapes, over 1,000 audio tapes. And there's since I'm going this far, there's I was giving away some audio tapes, and so was Carloti.
But I was not.
Kathy was never giving away any audio tapes, but she was included with Carloti and I in a lawsuit by the ones that actually are the webmasters of the heavensgate.com website, known as Mark and Sarah, who were members of the classroom for about 10 years, or 12 years maybe, and were given some tasks by Doe, but one of the tasks was to disseminate their information among those that wanted to disseminate to others and study it. Studying it being the primary reason for it, disseminating it, so that people would have the truth in their hands so that they could approach it at their own pace, learning about it, because it's a big, huge body of information. I mean, I'm not talking about little. There's no scientist that has a bigger body of information, in my opinion. And I could evidence that. Except that they weren't, trying to be scientists in like the human kingdom world. They're scientists from the next level. In their laboratories, they're scientists. Because everything's got its science to it, as far as I know. And as far as the way that they talked. And they didn't try to prove to us things, and yet that's one of the reasons why people don't believe in them as who they are, is because they don't show the kind of proof that people think they want, which they're not going to get unless they open their mind to identifying the proof that is available by digging into the information and being open to it. Like we have these shirts that I want to start making again, but not using any kind of logos or anything, so that we can't be sued for that too, because we are being sued for that too, by the way. That says something that Riccoti said in a tape, was one of the members. What if they were right? How many people can actually ask that question and then think about the ramifications to that question? Because what does that mean? What if they're right? Right about laying down their bodies, dying their bodies? So, you they weren't. That was their choice. That was right for them. No question about it in my mind. But that's not right for people that weren't of their type of mind to enough of a degree to where the next level would want them to not have the opportunity to grow their minds by their own use of a vehicle. Is the only way a mind can grow. A soul does not grow without a vehicle to use, to learn lessons through. This is not my understanding. I feel like this is something that I know. Now, I'm not saying that there can't be other growth processes happening, because Tiendo talked about that. But and it doesn't mean it can't change. And it does change. But certain things that work don't change. Like if the wheel works, then use the wheel. You don't need to change the wheel into a square. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't find new technologies. So there's always improvement on everything, potentially. Even in how things are used and when they're used. And anyway, I'm dribbling off. So let me get back to the chat. 'Cause I don't know, I got way off. So Mr. Sorkiller says mechatronic, like a machine, electronic. I don't know if this study is very popular in the States, but where I live here in Mexico, it is very popular and very well paid. Oh, that's what you're studying. I asked you that question. I forgot about it. But really, well, I'd like to learn more about that. Can an old dog do it? Can you do it at home? Can you learn about it like for free without? I mean, even for I know, Kathy's getting into artificial intelligence, and not the coding of it, but the development of it, I guess, and the marketing of it, and things like that. I think, right, Kathy? You'll get to know more about it. Yeah, she's in the very beginning stages. She's not actually taking the classes yet, but and you know we want to learn how to use it. Also, I mean, I know Kathy's talked about it, and I have too, to make these movies. If we can make things about tea and dough, you know, or even uh, um, we want to be able to talk about tea and dough, and uh, I'm not speaking for Kathy here. I mean, we're each individuals, but I think we are of the same mind. I know we are that uh, we want to do things with the artificial intelligence and videos and who knows, right? And even with the mind to make a documentary, uh, um, you know, regardless of what people sum up T and Do to be, it's the most interesting story that uh, um, I think we feel exists. Um, I mean, there's lots of interesting stories, of course. So I'm a little biased, I'm a little bit hard-headed about it, I guess. Well, not that really. I'm not really that hard-headed about it. I don't think. I'm just being silly. But in other words, if you bring up something to me, like let's say Metatronics, I don't. I'm interested in that. I'm open-minded to a lot of things. I hear. That's why I didn't vote because I could. I'm so open-minded that I didn't think anything was going to change really, and I was naive about that also because I didn't know what it meant to do the things that Trump is doing. And, you know, I mean, if he's being led by God, as he feels like he is, then he's got to become one mind with God. He's got to ask questions about everything he chooses to do. But, humans don't generally do that. They go with what they've become, mostly. And they don't think they need to ask God for an answer to a question, or whether that's a right or wrong decision. And that's throughout the human kingdom, not just the current president. And the people that despise the idea of God are there's a lot of power. They have a lot of power. That's more or less. It's not like cut and dry, really. I don't think, but it's more or less the left side of the equation. So to where whether they know it or not, the same as the right side of the equation, they're actually under the influence of space alien souls who actually literally bombard with the physical plasma-like thoughts that they bombard with humans with to keep them human, to keep them from aspiring to outgrow the human kingdom, to keep them addicted to humanness, to mammalian behavior and ways, to producing offspring is the human mammalian way that they will have to outgrow as like the Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with somebody that produced offspring. Not at all. They're responsible for their offspring according to Tiendo. And that I remember. I hope I don't remember that wrong. But but their ultimate loyalty needs to go to the next level if they want to. If they want to be uh, linked up with them, if they want to have a phone conversation with them, in a sense, I mean, if they want their help, but more than just help. Help is kind of a, sure, last minute, somebody gets, hurt somehow, and they pray to God that they're going to be saved. Doe would say about that, well, where were you all those other years asking for my help? So, but the next level may still help that person, or they may let the chips fall where they fall. And they may, maybe because that person said that, maybe they take that spirit and save it in a certain bucket with the other spirits that they save that are in different grades in school. Maybe when they stock the planet with their thoughts, they include some of those thoughts of whatever those individuals have become. That the next level knows how to sum up to produce certain kinds of thoughts. So if space aliens are bombarding us with those thoughts, like it's kind of like the movie They Live. I've used that illustration many times, where if you had the glasses on, then you could see that what was really on the billboards, or not really, but was on the billboards in the paint that you couldn't see without those glasses, if you want to look at it that way. Kathy was showing me a artistic style to her coloring art that makes it look like the page is moving, right? The background is moving about. And she showed me how you do that. And she's going to, I think, start to work with that. And so, I mean, we have all kinds of evidence of that thing, that our eyes can be tricked to think there's things happening that aren't, but then they are happening. They're happening with frequencies, I think. I guess frequencies of light, right? Because that's what our eyes see, according to the science, and I believe there's a lot of that. But I don't think the science knows everything about the eye. In fact, I'm pretty sure of it. And Jesus gave some illustrations using the eye that was, let your eye be single-minded, and then your whole body will be filled with light. So Doe was describing this in this tape, that single-mindedness with your older member's mind. And older members, for anybody that doesn't know that context, are the way that Tiendo taught that the evolutionary kingdom level above human was structured, as simple as older members and younger members. But that doesn't mean there's not degrees of younger members and degrees of older members. There are. Everybody's unique. And the next level doesn't take the uniqueness away. In fact, it's in the next level that an individual becomes unique for the first time. Becomes an individual for the first time, actually. Because before that, in the human kingdom, we're subject to all the thought forms that we don't know are around us, all the frequencies of the spirits, the dead, deceased human minds that are no longer in vehicles, but that seek human vehicles in order to operate through, to get their buzz, to get their fulfillment, to get their sense of life from, because they can't get it any other way because they don't have a vehicle that they're growing from, they're attached to, that they're programming. And we're all accepting of certain programs. Okay, that everybody's going to die. That's a program. That's not true. But the way to get to not die requires a transition that's compared to a metamorphic transition of a caterpillar to a butterfly, as if a human is a caterpillar and the butterfly is what the caterpillar can become if it dissolves its humanness, its caterpillar ways. It's got to actually kind of disintegrate them. I heard a scientist talking about it one time, that they were exploring what was in the chrysalis, in the cocoon, what was happening in there. And they said that the whole caterpillar's body became like a goo. And now, I don't know if they examined different parts of the goo, it would show different things. It probably does have different genetic things happening in it. But somehow from that, it grows into a new creature, and that old creature is gone, becomes the shell that's left behind. And the new creature is the soul, in the comparison, which is a plasma-like container that holds a plasma-like substance in it that's mind, programs, information. Programs aren't like they tell you what to do. Programs are like making your feet move. If you have the ability to rise above a physical ground with your physical vehicle, then that would be like a program that you know how to push the buttons to, because you know it exists, that capacity, but it takes a certain strength of mind to make it happen. It's a mind button. It's like that finger has got to have some force to it. And that's what we get when we overcome our human weaknesses in that context of what builds mind and what doesn't. What strength is. In the context of strength, weakness is not building mind, and strength is building mind. And we can see the examples of building mind when somebody does anything with their mind, and they build physical things and that have functions and inventions and test tubes and things in space. Everything that we do is showing the development of mind to be able to do these different things that take willpower. Athletes, when they have willpower, they show the willpower of mind over matter in a lot of ways. They ignore their aches and pains to try to break that record, or get on that team, or win the trophy, or have fun, whatever. But so everything in the human kingdom is geared to building mind. I think can be. Well, it's not that simple, of course, because there's all kinds of things that are growing in stages that are appropriate for their stages. Mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and the human kingdom are the 4 kingdom levels. And, I need to look at Daniel's prophecy regarding the 4 a little better. I did put some of the Daniel scriptures there because I was talking about them in my last stream. And so I'm not going to repeat all that to not be boring to individuals. But if you're interested in those prophecies, I feel like I learned a lot at the time, even though I don't consider what I learned absolute knowledge, because I don't know if it came from my older members. I can't prove that. And that's why becoming one with your older member doesn't mean knowing all things. because you don't know what you don't know, but there are things that you will grow to know, and then once you know them, you will know them, and you can mutate that into some making yourself into like a big shot. But when you know that you don't know squat compared to your older member, use a crude term, not that you don't know things, and that you got from your older member. That's your older member respects that. He knows that. I mean, because it's from his older member's mind. The, when we have certain things and certain characteristics, and when we make certain decisions, and it's not. But when your older member is not with you to tell you whether your decisions were better or not, then it's a trial and error. And it's even a trial and error when you're with your older member, as the tapes demonstrate as well. Because they know things in multifaceted ways. But quieting the mind in order to listen, and wanting to listen to the highest source you can imagine existing in the universe, and thinking about what that individual or those individuals are thinking about, and projecting that into the heavens, into the distant heavens, as far away as you can imagine. Get beyond the Earth's atmosphere in your mind. That's actually a frequency that the next level knows how to identify on their computer systems. And they can attend to, but they're not going to just answer questions of people. They want to know, they want to hear from people that they want to know the answers to the questions, the biggest questions. And I think the biggest question, Kathy and I were talking about the other day a little bit, is about a desire to have purpose. And of course that can be, we see that throughout the human kingdom. We all have, I think, degrees of times when we felt like we had some purposes. And I don't, but see, I think that, to me, I don't know about other people, but it's not something that I think about. It's something that, like, I think a desire to have purpose is behind somebody questing for the truth. Because they want to know what's real. And that's there's a purpose to that, I think. Finding out what's real in the world. I don't know. I think that's a form of purpose. But wanting to know what's real from the perspective of the older members who created this planet and the life forms on it, we can look to all the previous information, but then there's this body of current information that is enormously descriptive of that kingdom in a way that's more real than I've ever seen anything talked about. Laboratories, it just made sense to me that that was true. Now, I'm not saying that I've got the best common sense. There's plenty of things that I don't have common sense about, so it's not all encompassing. But some things I feel like I was given, or I got from whatever soul was returning to try to bring this vehicle up to date with what it understood, which really only started in earnest when I met Tian Do in 1975. Before that, I was just experimenting like anybody else. I wanted to know more about stuff, but I wasn't really going after it. that much. Well, that's not true. I was going after it. I was reading Bhagavad Gita at night, every night. I was reading, Paramahansa Yogananda, the autobiography of a yogi, and other books. I was, participating in meditations and like I've said over and over again, documentaries, and I'm kind of bored with, but I wasn't just like, all of a sudden one day, hey, I believe that, I believe that, I believe that, kind of thing. No, I was a skeptic. I still am, some, well, skeptical about some things, but, well, I don't know. I'm so over skeptical sometimes, I think. And also, I'm over opinionated, I think, at times. And it makes for lively conversation with my partner. Because we both, and Kathy's done an amazing amount of reading and study of things. And so it's, trying to make sense out of this world, the things that are happening, and to deal with all the responses that are happening. Uh, everybody is actually faced with more pressure, I believe. More, when you have more and more people concerned about things in a way that's emotionally difficult to think about and feel, and and to see the lack of compassion that some have, and at the same time the lack of recognition of all kinds of dirty deeds that have been going on for a long, long time that I've witnessed. I mean, decades. And yet, most of the people that are probably chatting about a lot of these things don't have hardly a clue of what's been going on all that time because of how things were always covered up and and kept away from the media, and or became labeled conspiracy theories, and all the way to 1947 and 8 and even before that, with the crashes of spacecrafts with bodies on them. That T and O felt like initially they weren't sure what that was. They weren't right away thinking that. Well, I don't know when they started to really dig into that material. To be honest with you, maybe Doe will say something about it. 'Cause I can't remember T talking about the crashes. But we had the Roswell book. Okay, so. But they didn't talk about it. They didn't bring it up to a meeting and say, here's what we think about the Roswell book. They didn't do that with much of anything. But they provided us with books. And after I left, I think they had more books. Because they wanted people to have the ability to look at all kinds of different things. Because a lot of people have a lot of clues, have a lot of little pieces of the puzzle. But it doesn't mean that they're putting them together in the right way to come up with a clear picture. A clear picture can have a lot of stuff in it, right? I mean, the picture of T and O, if you use their names, it's got a lot of facets to it. The spirit world, thought forms, space aliens, health of the body, belief over disease, health of the body from a genetic perspective, from the genes and the diets, consumption, the whole world of so-called alternative medicines, through the Transfiguration Diet book. It's a whole nother pursuit that Doe went through all of them. A whole way of thinking, all different ways of thinking that you see in society, because the next level prepared that to happen. Next level is short for the evolutionary kingdom level above human. I put the word kingdom in there because Doe used that in his last description in the book title. In place of using evolutionary, though. Even though in 75 they didn't use the word kingdom. Because they didn't want to. They knew, well, the reason I think they didn't use it was because they didn't want to appeal to religionists as much. In other words, people that were often so glued to their religion that any different kind of terminology was scorned, that was frowned upon, and they wouldn't even pay attention to it. They wouldn't even listen to it because they would think, that sounds like a word from Satan. And certainly the word, putting the title of evolution in there, to a lot of people that became Christians and thought that, Darwin couldn't possibly have any accuracy to what he was teaching, even though, evolutionary processes were built into survival of the fittest kind of identification, were built into the human kingdom and the animal kingdom. We have all the evidence of it. So they were acting like programmed robots by not considering what the one true God would say about, or if they were considering it, they were so bombarded by the thoughts from the lower forces that wanted to discredit the people that formed the religions after an older member came to deposit their mind through taking over a human vehicle. They know how to take over human vehicles, members of the next level. And that's what the process was all about, taking over human vehicles to make them into our slaves. The vehicle becomes a slave of the mind that's occupying it. More and more. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it can take a number of incarnations. But it doesn't have to be slow either, because the next level doesn't think slow ever. Anyway, so I'm going to move on. But, well, I'm not saying they don't.
Well,
Speed's not an issue.
Doe was talking about speed when we were listening to that.
Yeah, but how did he describe the speed? Do you remember? I can go back to my notes and see it, maybe. I went right to it. Speed is important. Now, this is my notes. Speed is important when you are thinking about something, but that you are not uptight. You aren't relaxed enough thinking. You're not uptight that you're not relaxed enough.
Yeah, you don't want to be so uptight that you're not relaxed.
Right. And
like so stressed about going fast.
Right. Like, oh, I better, pull in my older member's mind now so I can have the full picture, you know. You can have anxiety about it, but that would be a negative. Uh, Using thirst as a negative. But, um, but at the same time, but thinking you are open and receptive. So you want to be speedy in your thinking about being open and receptive. But if you're slow, it's like no thirst, no energy. So nothing is pulled in. So pacing is speed. Not getting brittle, not enough energy behind it, or no, not so much energy that it's, as opposed to not so much energy that it's scattered and it's not clear. And you used all those buzzwords. I mean, they're not buzzwords, but they're keywords. Actually, is a better way to refer to them. I think to try to describe the way that he had grown accustomed to think with tea. He even said something about that, about tea, in my notes. Let me see if I can find that quick. As a match, a whole word. Oh, he said, this is an experience. In other words, becoming one with your older member's mind by wanting to know what they were thinking at any given moment about this or about that, or and not deciding that you're hearing it, or not judging, although you might, but not depending on it, not counting on it so much because that can get you off track. The lower forces would love for you to think that you can be an instrument of T&O or any entity. Well, with other entities you can, if you attract them, but with T&O you have to work for it. Anyway, so let's see, maybe some other words here will help describe it better. Like not like let's see. But you don't want to be second guessing your older member or arriving at something not knowing where that older member might be headed. So you don't want to expand on what they gave us. That's even the criteria for the common law copyright that was put on the book, the Heaven's Gate book, that you could copy it in part or entirely, as long as you didn't change it or add to it. But to me, it's a twist to say my talking about it is adding to it. See, that's like, coming in the back door and saying you're adding to it if you're... I've had that told to me. That I shouldn't be talking about it. I should just present what's there. But I don't think that's from my older member's mind. Although it is a welcome caution to have, because of how we can think that we can talk about it, and there's also a danger to it, because people that hear someone like myself talking about it, they might not know how to separate. Well, they're not going to know how to separate what T and Do said from what I said. And that's why I say to people all the time, go read it for yourself and listen to the tapes. So, but I'm giving you a little bit of clues of what can be found in the tapes, which to me, that's a good thing. That's a positive. Even if I get some of the things a little wrong here and there, I think enough of it will be accurate enough to where if it perks somebody's interest, they'll think about going to see what Doe said about it and trying to get it directly from the horse. But because of the way that we are bombarded with the lower forces, a lot of people, I think, because I know I'm in this situation, to where it's not going to occur to me to go listen to that tape. Unless I have a reason to go. Most of the tape listening that I did after I left the classroom, before I met Kathy, was because I was looking for something. And so I would listen to the entire tapes, you know, and not just that, but the ones that I didn't hear, I listened to all those that I could find until I got presented with a bunch that I hadn't heard and that I'm still. Well, Kathy and I first, when we got together, the first thing we started to do was listen to the ones that I haven't heard.
Because that's what you wanted.
Yeah, because I wanted to do that. She wanted to start from the beginning because she'd been through, a whole bunch of listening before I met her.
Well, not really, because I didn't really have that much access to them.
Right.
So
Because
I
Kathy
hadn't
asked.
really listened to that many,
Yeah.
actually.
She asked Mark and Sarah for the tapes. And they sent them to her one by one.
Yeah, up to 3. I got 3.
She got 3 in
But
total.
you don't need to go through all that.
Yeah, I don't need to go through all that. But then, I don't know if they still send one to somebody. Somebody can go ask them. So anyway, so you're not really trying to be one with your older member's mind in order to come to conclusions. But it's the process of having the desire to have the same thinking and the thoughts and not trusting that you know where your older member is moving. Not to get out on a limb. Just scanning as an older member is scanning, thinking about this topic and hoping if older member said what you were thinking about today, asking you to elaborate to see more and more similarity. And then talked about that it's an experience that he and T had, and that they wanted to work with us about for a long time. Well, at that point, he was talking about, I think, the meditation, which was where Doe would express something during a directed meditation, and then the students would think about that and only that until Doe expressed something else, and then they would think about that and only that. Now, thinking about that and only that wouldn't be just like limited to just having those words on your mind. Because if you're blocking out, see, the thing is, during that kind of an experiment, you would be opening yourself up. And the next level has ways of giving us something that we can think was from them in our minds. They're not with us in a vehicle giving it. That's the most accurate way we can get things. But we can think that they were communicating with us. And what it has with it is, I think, a certain amount of energy that helps us think about making certain choices. And then we would be faced with thinking, what choice would our older members make in this circumstance? What, and that the older members can actually literally be helping us make those choices. But they want us to make the choice. So they don't give us the answers. Doug talked about this later. I don't think. Let's see if I wrote it down. Well, he was talking about when him and T were working on this. That's a dangerous experiment if you go astray with your older member and with others. You can put more static in the air if you think with judgment instead of attempting to think in the same way. Just an attempt and concern and hope that your older member is thinking in the same way as what you are thinking. They are thinking. Over time, we'll arrive at conclusions about things you are thinking about. If we can get anything good out of it, you will experience things like people singing in the same pitch. That has a lot more meaning, though, as pitches.
Well, no, he doesn't say that, like, that you would hear people singing.
No, you're not going to actually hear people singing, but he was comparing it to the experience of knowing when people are singing in the same pitch. Yeah, hearing that. I mean, so in other words, well, in a sense, it would be a hearing because you're listening. It's a type of hearing, and it's probably even a radio wave in reality. That looks good, babe.
What are you talking about?
Kathy got the yogurt out.
Yeah, you better make sure people know that you're not.
The vanilla flavored yogurt.
Well, it is getting up there here.
Yeah, it's getting time for closing the stream, I think. Well, Doug did say, I want to put a little bit more on it, that that Doug had a whole mess of concerns all the time. And the ones that were with him, they would hear it. And I have to be honest that I also heard from him sometimes while I was in the class of his concerns outside of meetings and little experiences when he was in the craft and he gathered a few individuals to run something by them in a room, and he would express concerns that he had. And he wasn't asking us for solutions. And but that doesn't mean that sometimes he didn't, because I wasn't necessarily with him sometimes when he pulled people aside, over the years. So he was potentially doing that with individuals, all the time. Sometimes addressing their concerns and, from notes that they wrote, because we had that communication all the time while we were in the classroom. I mean, not that, time wouldn't go by in between hearing from them, and we didn't always hear from them in person. Sometimes it was over the phone. Sometimes it was through an audio tape. Anyway, or in a meeting. Because of how things applied to a number of people that could benefit from the response that they were giving to any one of us. But in terms of next steps, that didn't really come into play until after T left her vehicle, because when T was in her vehicle, he was looking to T for next steps. And they were looking together to T's older member for next steps. Because they were working as a partnership, that meant that they considered equally what one another was saying, even though Doe knew that whatever T said, he can count on being a better direction, if it came down to it. Which he had to learn that. He didn't know that at first. It took him, he was always learning that and getting validation of that. Throughout the tapes, you can hear it. In the 12 or 13 years that Doe was working with T.
Do you think tahini and yogurt will taste good together?
Oh, yeah, why not?
I'm gonna find out.
Yeah. I could see, having it to dip in or something in a little bit. Oh boy.
Yep. Bananas are a little ripe, but
They're not ripe enough?
I don't know.
I bought one bunch that I thought was ripe enough.
Seems better.
Yeah, it's cold in here.
I'll move this paper.
Okay, folks, so I'm going to go to the chat room, I guess. And there are a question by Mr. Sawkiller. I was rewatching the Max documentary about Heaven's Gate. At one point, you had the same button-down shirt you wore in the class. Do you keep it as a souvenir, or is it more symbolic? I keep it, but I didn't think of it as a souvenir. But I was asked if I had anything, so I wore it for that reason, because somebody asked me about doing it.
The producers.
The producers of that came to my house. So Rise Above says, hello. Hello to you. Joseph Coates says, I don't get along with my sister, my own sister. Can you relate to anything similar with your family? Well, not really. I get along with my sister and my brother. I mean, when I was young, I didn't have any problems with them, either my sister or my brother. I mean, we didn't fight. But I was, 5 years older than my sister. And and 9 years older than my brother. And I just wasn't the type of person, the type of kid that picked fights with people anyway. So I guess not. Okay, so Rise Above says, is everyone's older member on Earth Do? Or are there others? I'm a bit confused about that. Well, I believe yes. I believe anybody that is looking for the highest truth on this planet and projecting their asking in earnest to that highest source that they can imagine existing, to the creators of this planet, will eventually come into the information from T and O. No, but I mean, um, well, but it might not be in this lifetime. Whether they come into the truth about next level. It might, there might be somebody in some country that never heard about it. I mean, there's a lot of people actually born every day that never heard about T and O in the United States, where they were, existed for 20 something years. So, so then to those individuals, Doe's not their older member because they're not looking to him as an older member. They don't even know he exists. But if they have that overall desire to have some kind of relationship with the creators and are asking for help in some way, whether it's through their religion or whatever it is, then the responses they're going to get, depending on what they're asking for, can potentially come from T and Do and crew. Like, in other words, if a human is thirsty for the truth, they send out a signal that the next level can pick up. And the light might get a little brighter on their console of their computer system for that individual. And then they can go right to that individual and know exactly where they are on the planet. They've got laboratories, they've got technology. And they might have a standard procedure for responding to somebody's question. Because it's pretty much going to be a question that they're going to be responding to, even though it might not be worded as a question. But, it'd be something that somebody wants to understand, wants to know about, wants to get relief from, despair or about. They're looking for help in some way. Let's say they lost a loved one and they want God to help them understand why this happened, and it can be, I don't know what the criteria would be for next level to identify enough thirst to where it's not that the next level wants us to have suffering, but they know that it's through suffering that, and that's what Buddha was talking about as well, which Doe felt like evidenced being a task from the next level. Anyway, sure, I'll eat it. So maybe that's all I need to say about that, because it's not just cut and dry. It's not like if they don't know Doe, all of a sudden they're lost. No, it's not that way.
No, I don't think. I think the question was like overall.
Right.
Who is the older member for Earth?
Right. Well,
Like
Doe is the older member for Earth for anybody that subscribes to looking to him. I don't know how else to answer it. No, there are no others. I mean, everyone else that's teaching this and that, teaching that path to enlightenment or that is a facsimile, is an artificial space alien direction.
What if you identify more with Jesus?
Right. Well, if somebody identifies more with Jesus, then if they open their minds to look at what T and O are teaching, they're going to see Jesus
What if they
is
can't
in
get
that.
past the suicides?
What if they can't get past the suicides? Well, then they don't know what Jesus taught about laying down the body for the older member, which what Jesus taught his disciples. And if they don't believe in that, that's fine, but they're not going to see that consistency and all the many consistencies in Jesus' teachings.
Yeah, but Jesus doesn't ask every person on earth to lay down their vehicles, their bodies.
Right. It's only to those that it's given. That's the way that Jesus talked about it, and it's those that are seeking to be in service to the highest source, and recognize when they're in that circumstance, are the individuals. When we're talking about individuals, those we're talking about vehicles that are under the influence of either souls or spirits or the space aliens. I mean, the souls can be space alien souls or next level souls. In that general format, or they can be spirits and or thought forms. If there's other kind of dimensions that they can be influenced by, well, human to human, we're influenced by each other, by our actions. So that's more than thought. That's, physically, right? And that's genetic influence. That's not just genetic, it's development of the mind of the individual from birth to their adulthood, if they're an adult, their experiences, what they chose to do, what they chose not to do, what they chose to get into, what they chose to get out of in the human kingdom. Like getting into addictions, getting out of addictions. Different, each one, whatever it is. And that's what builds the mind that can then identify more and more truth from the next level, however it comes to them. But always still comes with a challenge, because what comes from the next level is trying to help us outgrow our human biological container and all the directions in which we've been programmed to believe are success or purpose, or that all have their success and have their purposes, but not necessarily in a next level way. Because success to the next level is basically graduating into the next level. And that's where life begins for the first time without influence from discarnates and anyway, that's so
Were you closing out?
yeah. So Mr. Sawkiller says, well, I have to go. I have to sleep. Take care, Sawyer. P.S. There is a green alien floating in your head, laughing out loud. That's Dr. Little Green is what Doe is depicted as being in the Transfiguration Diet book.
He's talking about that behind you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I wasn't thinking that you were talking about that guy. That guy. Right.
I mean, I could be wrong, of course, but I think that's...
There is a green alien floating in my head, in your head. Every time I sit back. Kathy put that there. I love it. Good night, folks.